The Canon EOS RP is Canon's cheapest full-frame mirrorless camera. Being released in March of 2019, the RP is actually now 5 years old. It was originally released for around 1,500 Australian dollars, but now you can find it in good condition for about $500 to $800. It's got a 26.2 megapixel full-frame sensor, a flip-out back LCD screen, Canon's actually really good dual-pixel autofocus system, and Canon's new RF mount for their mirrorless system. On paper, it's a really good camera, but it does have some shortcomings. When the RP was first released, it copped a lot of slack. A lot of the main complaints were its lack of usable 4K video and the small battery. While these complaints are fair, the lack of features like this are to be expected in a cheaper body like the RP. In this video, we're going to find out if you should buy the RP or not. Let's start off with the build quality of the camera. I have no complaints here. It's built really well and it's got the same material as Canon's other mirrorless cameras. One thing I've always loved about Canon is that their dials feel amazing, and the RP is no exception. It has two main dials for changing your shutter speed and aperture, and both feel really quality and great. It's also got the usual mode dial and the on and off switch. The back of the camera though it's a little bit of a letdown. It's got a basic button layout and there isn't a joystick or a large dial like on the R5 or the R6. You get the usual menu button, trash and preview button, plus this weird selection pad in the middle that has the Q button in the middle. You also get the info button and the usual other buttons. The back of the camera also features a 3-inch vari-angle LCD screen and an electronic viewfinder with 2.3 million dots of resolution. The side of the camera also has the usual ports, a USB-C, mini HDMI, a mic and headphone jack, and a remote trigger release. The camera has the usual battery door at the bottom, but unlike most cameras, the SD card actually goes in the battery door. Most cameras you'll have it go on the side of the grip just here, but I guess they chose not to do that with this camera. And another thing is that also, this camera does not feature dual SD card slots, which can be a letdown for most people, but it is an entry-level camera, so you're not going to be shooting professional stuff that requires two SD cards. This camera uses Canon's smaller LPE17 batteries, which does make it so you have a lot less battery life. Unlike a lot of other cameras that Canon makes, Canon's other cameras use the LPE6 batteries, which are much larger, have much better battery life, and overall are a lot better than the LPE17 batteries. It's not a big difference. You will notice you'll get a lot less photos on this camera than the LPE6 batteries, but one upside is that the LPE17 batteries are cheaper than the LPE6 batteries, so it's not really too big of a deal. So overall, I'd say this camera is built really well. It's just missing a lot of the other buttons and dials that other Canon cameras have. I'd say Canon has left these out for more professional cameras, which makes sense as this camera is only an entry-level option. Now if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to please like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel as these videos take a long time to make. Now back to the video. Let's get onto the photography side of things. This camera is great as an entry-level camera for photography. You can even put pretty much any lens on here to get the photos you want. While the mount is an RF mount, pick up an adapter and use your EF lenses without a problem. The autofocus and everything still works completely the same. I run an EF 24-70 on this camera and I have no problem. If you're looking for a camera strictly for photography, and you're not using to plan it professionally, look no further. The RP is the camera to get. Whilst that's not to say the RP can't be used in a professional environment, as it still produces high quality images and has a hot shoe for flash. I'll put some images up taken on the RP. As you can see, the images out of this camera are great. They are high quality with little noise. The images are vibrant with great dynamic range and are a breeze to edit in Lightroom or Photoshop. The RP of course shoots in RAW, with a format of CR3, though you can have the option to shoot in JPEG, RAW, or JPEG and RAW at the same time, although that'll obviously take up more space if you're doing both at the same time. And this is great for not having to edit your photos if you're just making very simple adjustments and want to easily be able to take your photos straight from camera and upload them to Instagram or any other social media platforms. But overall, this camera is amazing for photography and shouldn't be overlooked when looking for your next photography camera. Let's get into the ugly. The video features on this camera are by far the biggest letdown. If you're looking for a video camera, don't get the RP. The RP records 1080p up to 60fps and 4K up to 24fps. This may sound great, but in reality it's really not. To start off with, the 1080 on this camera looks horrible. It's just not sharp, the edges of everything are really blurry, and the quality is just not appealing. And then the 4K video on this camera does look good in terms of sharpness, but it has an almost unusable 1.7 times crop, and it doesn't have Canon's dual pixel autofocus. So the camera's autofocus just bounces around back and forth and doesn't focus on anything. And on top of that, the RP doesn't have IBIS either. So if you want stabilization, you have to use the digital stabilization. The digital stabilization on this camera does work well, but it crops into the video even more. So this means if you're shooting on a 24mm, in the end, shooting 4K with stabilization, you're going to end up shooting at like about 50mm without autofocus, pretty much. The camera also lacks any form of log or 10-bit color, so you don't have much editing flexibility in post. Another thing is this camera has insanely terrible rolling shutter. If you're going to record anything fast moving, just forget it, like it's going to be extremely distorted. But now that I've got my little rant out of the way, you can see the video on the RP is not impressive. Do not get this camera if you're looking for video. With all that out of the way, the big question lingers. Should you buy the RP? My answer is yes and no. If you're looking for an entry-level photography camera, then by all means yes. It's a great camera for that and you'll be really happy with it. But on the other hand, if you're looking for a camera mostly for video, unfortunately it's a no. The lack of usable 4K on top of the terrible rolling shutter and bad 1080p quality just means I unfortunately cannot recommend the RP for video. Steer away from this camera if you're looking for video functionality. I still love this camera and I'm going to continue using it for my photography needs. Canon has made a good camera, it's just missing some features. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.